More weight. Those were the last 3 words uttered from the bleeding throat of Giles Corey, an 81-year-old man. He wasn't standing on the gallows, he was lying flat on the cold ground of Salem, his chest crushed by massive stones piled on top of each other by the very neighbors he had once lived peacefully with. His crime? He was never convicted of being a witch. He was crushed to death for one incredibly absurd reason: refusing to stand trial. Agreeing to stand trial meant he would be stripped of all his land and property to be confiscated by the state, leaving his family in absolute poverty. Through his silence and excruciatingly painful death, he protected his children's inheritance rights. Welcome to the dark reality of Salem in 1692. This is a world where silence is also a crime, where honesty cannot save you, and where a neighbor's delusional dream could become a legal death sentence. But there is a historical truth even more chilling than everything that happened: this terror almost never ended, and it could have entirely become the permanent legal foundation shaping the entire United States of America. To understand the level of madness in the Salem trials, we must look back at the legal records and stare directly at a bizarre concept known as spectral evidence. In the modern justice system, we rely on the principle of innocent until proven guilty through physical evidence, witnesses, and clear motives. But in Salem, the court opened a door that allowed imagination to strip away human lives. Spectral evidence stipulated that, if a victim claimed they saw your spirit or specter pinching them, biting them, or forcing them to sign the devil's book in a dream or hallucination, it was considered irrefutable evidence in court. The colonial court argued with an unbreakable theological logic: the devil could not borrow the shape of an honest person if that person did not voluntarily agree to a pact. Therefore, if someone saw your ghost doing evil, you yourself must have sold your soul to the devil. The case of Bridget Bishop, the first woman sent to the gallows, is a bloody testament to the brutality of this law. She was not convicted because someone caught her performing magic, but primarily based on the testimony of young girls screaming in court, claiming that her specter was tormenting them right at that moment, even though her physical body stood still on the defendant's stand. Even more tragic is the story of Martha Corey. She was a pious woman, a role model in the community. Her only crime was publicly mocking the girls and declaring that these children are just acting. Immediately, the girls turned their targets on her, faking horrific seizures and screaming that Martha's soul was tearing at them. Judgment in Salem was not based on truth, but on who could perform the most convincingly painful theatrical act. To this day, the true reason that caused the young girls in Salem to start seizing, babbling, and exhibiting bizarre behaviors remains one of the most heated debates in the historical and scientific communities. Was this a physical illness, or a cruel psychological manipulation? In 1976, researcher Linda Caporael proposed a shocking hypothesis: Salem was poisoned by natural drugs. Caporael pointed out that the unusually wet weather of 1691 created the perfect conditions for ergot fungus to grow on rye fields, the village's main food source. Ergot is the natural precursor used to synthesize LSD, a highly potent hallucinogen. According to this hypothesis, the girls weren't acting, they were actually experiencing bad trips due to chemical poisoning, causing visual hallucinations, the sensation of ants crawling under their skin, and violent muscle spasms. However, this biological hypothesis faced fierce opposition from psychologists and social historians. They posed a sharp question: if it was food poisoning, why did the symptoms only appear in a closely knit group of young girls, and not spread to the entire population eating from the same bread supply? The second explanation is much darker: mass hysteria and the corruption of power. In the strict Puritan society of the 17th century, women and young girls were at the very bottom of the social ladder. They had no voice, were not allowed to participate in town meetings, were forbidden from reading novels, and lived in constant fear of sin and hellfire. Suddenly, through nonsensical screams and pointing fingers, these teenage girls found themselves holding ultimate power. They could make the most powerful men in town hold their breath and listen, and they could throw adults they despised into dark dungeons. History witnessed a terrifying game of psychological manipulation, where oppressed children turned into bloodthirsty dictators, and adults blindly obeyed fear. In the eye of that madness, the story of Tituba, an enslaved woman of color, emerges as a masterclass in psychology and survival tactics. She was one of the first 3 people accused. Unlike the other 2 women, one impoverished and one mentally ill, who vehemently denied the charges only to suffer the same tragic fate, Tituba chose a different path. She understood her position perfectly. A slave would never be believed by simply saying, "I am innocent." Therefore, she gave the powerful white judges exactly what they craved to hear. In court, Tituba wove a chilling, epic tale. She detailed how the devil appeared in the form of a tall man in a black coat, carrying a fiery red book, demanding she sign it in blood. She spoke of giant dogs, yellow birds, and witches' covens deep in the woods. By confessing and describing a large-scale demonic conspiracy, Tituba transformed herself from a suspect into an invaluable, cooperating witness for the court. She even pointed fingers at others to save her own life. The sharpness of someone at the bottom of society exploited the theological fears of the ruling class to slip through the door of death. Salem was not just a battle between God and the devil, but also a fierce class survival war, where the truth was not as valuable as a fictional story that fit the prejudice. However, if we only look at Salem through the lens of religion and psychology, we miss the most brutal half of the truth. Behind the prayers and tears of repentance was a ruthless economic machine disguised under the cloak of faith. According to English law at the time, when a person was convicted of using magic, their property and land could be confiscated or had to be sold off cheaply to pay for exorbitant jail fees. That's right, in Salem, you had to pay for your own imprisonment, your food, and even the fee for the executioner who would hang you. This is when powerful families like the Putnams stepped onto the chessboard. The Putnam family was an old power in Salem but was losing political influence and land to newly rising merchant families like the Porters. It was no coincidence that Thomas Putnam, the head of the family, along with his daughter and wife, were the most active in making accusations. They targeted those holding strategically located, fertile lands, or wealthy widows without male protectors. Pointing fingers and shouting, which became the most legal, efficient, and safe tool for wealth appropriation. You didn't need to send an army to pillage, you only needed a daughter who knew how to fake a seizure in court. Salem proved a bitter truth: when greed is armed with legal tools and sanctified by religion, no one in society is safe. History is often woven with tales of moral awakening, but the truth about how the Salem witch hunts ended carries a much more pragmatic and bitter tone. The trials did not stop because the judges suddenly realized their mistakes, nor did the public suddenly become humane. This killing machine only truly ground to a halt when the flames of accusation began to take root and spread upward to the peak of the power pyramid. In their bloodlust and delusion of absolute power, the young girls in Salem made a fatal mistake. They started pointing fingers at the wives of the colony's most prominent figures, culminating with Mary Phipps, the wife of Governor William Phipps. Up until that point, Governor Phipps had been largely absent, occupied with border wars, leaving his deputy, William Stoughton, to act as he pleased. But when his own wife was named on the list of those making deals with the devil, Governor Phipps instantly realized this madness had spiraled out of control. He immediately ordered the suspension of the Court of Oyer and Terminer, banned the use of spectral evidence, and issued pardons for those awaiting execution. At the same time, the religious elite also began to change their tune. The powerful minister Increase Mather, who had previously supported the eradication of evil, uttered a phrase that would reshape the foundation of future justice: "It were better that 10 suspected witches should escape, than that one innocent person should be condemned." The shame and devastating consequences of Salem left a deep scar in the American psyche. It became a bloody lesson about the danger of merging religious doctrine with state power, contributing to the later founding fathers' decision to place the separation of church and state and the right to a fair trial at the center of the U.S. Constitution. But, what if Governor Phipps had died in battle at the border? What if William Stoughton, a fanatic judge who steadfastly refused to repent until his dying breath, held absolute power? Stepping through the door of this alternate timeline, we will witness an America not built on the ideals of freedom, but molded by absolute terror. Imagine a 1693 with no pardons. William Stoughton becomes the most powerful governor in North America. To him, Salem is not a regrettable incident, but a standard model, a divine purge that needs to be replicated. The court of Oyer and Terminer is not dissolved, instead, it is restructured and elevated into the Permanent Spectral Inquisition Department, a high-level secret police agency operating parallel to the government. In this reality, spectral evidence is not only not abolished, but it is constitutionalized. The greatest principle of modern law, innocent until proven guilty, is completely inverted. The burden of proof now rests heavily on the trembling shoulders of the accused. You are accused of your soul leaving your body to strangle your neighbor's pig in the middle of the night? How do you prove the absence of something invisible like a soul? The answer is impossible. This legal system is designed not to find the truth, but to ensure that no one can escape a sentence once they are in the crosshairs. In this fictional society, the prosperity of the government apparatus does not rely on agricultural or commercial taxes, but depends entirely on the confiscation economy. The Inquisition Department will systematically target the economic elite, wealthy landowners, and independent merchants. A new law might be enacted: anyone harboring or covering up for a witch will have their entire estate confiscated. The country will plunge into a silent civil war of informants. Neighbors stalking neighbors, children encouraged to denounce their parents to receive a percentage commission from the confiscated property. Trust between human beings shatters completely, giving way to a police state where your survival depends on whether you obediently submit to the church or not. When witch hunting becomes national policy, the girls capable of seeing specters in Salem will not be forgotten or condemned. On the contrary, they will become the nation's first generation of professional witch detectives. We can envision the birth of special academies, where children are taken from their families at a young age to be trained in the art of recognizing demons. Seizing, rolling eyes, and screaming are no longer manifestations of pathology or deceit, but are revered as excellent professional skills. These child detectives will travel in packs from town to town, like notorious inspection teams, carrying the power of life and death in their hands. Wherever they go, terror follows. The most horrific consequence of this timeline is the complete suffocation of the Age of Enlightenment in America. Anyone attempting to explain natural phenomena through science, physics, or biology will be condemned as having devil's curiosity. Using a microscope might be considered peering into the dark world, while Benjamin Franklin's studies on electricity would certainly land him on the stake for the crime of summoning God's lightning. The Industrial Revolution in North America will be delayed for centuries. Instead of factories spewing smoke or sprawling railroad tracks, North America will be trapped in a new dark age, a barren land ruled by fanatics opposing all human evolutionary efforts. Science does not die from a lack of intellect, but it is strangled by death sentences in the name of the Supreme Being. If Salem never stopped, the America we know today would never have been born. The great minds of the American Revolution of 1776, like John Adams, who grew up not far from the unmarked graves of the Salem victims, would never have had the chance to absorb the ideas of freedom and democracy. Imagine a George Washington not as the great general leading the Continental Army, but hunted down as a warlock, accused of using dark magic to instigate a rebellion against the divine order. The Declaration of Independence would never be written, and instead of the immortal opening line, "We the people," the Constitution of this land would begin with, "We, the servants of God, born to purge sinners." America, instead of being the beacon of freedom, would become a closed, theocratic fortress, one of the most brutal totalitarian states in human history. Yet, what makes this fictional scenario chilling is not because it's a sci-fi fantasy, but because the ghosts of Salem are always lurking, returning in newer forms. Look at the McCarthyism era in the 1950s in America, when thousands of people had their careers and lives destroyed simply because of baseless accusations of sympathizing with communism. Collective fear was once again weaponized. And if we look at the current digital age, is the cancel culture on social media an upgraded version of spectral evidence? With just one accusation, an edited photo, an anonymous post on the internet, millions of people are ready to play the roles of jury and executioner, burning down the honor and livelihood of a person without the need for concrete evidence or a fair trial. The torch-wielding mobs of the past have now switched to holding smartphones, but the essence of irrational fury and the thirst to condemn others remains unchanged. In the extreme suffocation of the theocratic fortress, humanity's instinctual yearning for freedom would certainly not be easily subdued. We can outline a scenario where an underground resistance network is formed, similar to the Underground Railroad that later helped slaves escape in actual American history. The accused, silent scientists, and intellectuals trying to preserve the light of reason will have to find a way to escape the Massachusetts colony. Carriages hiding people under straw, survival codes intricately sewn into blankets, and desperate escapes through snowy forests in the misty night will become a painful daily reality. Their destination is none other than the lands of the Native American tribes, people who were originally deemed by the church as pagan savages, but now become their sole protectors. Or, they must risk crossing the harsh borders to head north to French-controlled territories. The irony of history will prevail. Those who call themselves civilized, carrying holy books and laws, become the most brutal human hunters, while the lands considered barbaric become the last sanctuary for humanity and life. The psychological consequences lasting for generations in this hypothetical timeline will create a genome of collective paranoia. Children will be taught from birth to never look strangers in the eye, never show excessive emotion, and always conceal any thoughts that are somewhat eccentric or creative. Art, poetry, medicine, and music will be heavily censored, only allowed to exist if they serve the sole purpose of glorifying dogma and praising the purges. Human emotions are suppressed to the point of suffocation, creating a massive ticking time bomb in the heart of society. It would be an America failing right from the cradle, a society cannibalizing itself out of the fear of the unseen. This hypothetical story of a Salem that never ends is not just an exercise to stimulate sci-fi imagination, but it serves as a black mirror reflecting the darkest corners of humanity's ego. It brutally reminds us that democracy, truth, and human rights are incredibly fragile structures. They can be completely torn down at any moment if we yield to the irrational furies of the mob, and turn a blind eye to the cunning who use moral screens to seize the power of life and death. History is not just the milestones that have occurred, but also the tragedies we were lucky enough to avoid. The Salem witch trials closed in 1693 not because the demons were destroyed or flew back to hell, but simply because humans began to have enough courage to use the light of reason to dispel the darkness of unfounded fear. If you find this alternate timeline chilling enough but also highly evocative of the present, please hit the like button so the algorithm can spread this video to more history lovers. Do you believe that a modern society, fully equipped with advanced technology and a strict legal system, could inadvertently regress to a witch hunt era in a more sophisticated form? What do you think about the cancel or deplatforming culture on social media today? Could it be a form of 21st century spectral evidence? Please leave your sharp opinions and perspectives in the comments section below, and we will dissect this issue together. If you are passionate about hidden historical mysteries or what-if hypotheses that have the power to change our perspective on the world, please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell. We will meet again in the next thrilling journeys through time. Thank you for staying with us until the final seconds. Always stay alert and question what you hear, because sometimes, the truth hidden in silence is more terrifying than the most ghostly rumors.